Howdy folks, effing controller here, and I want to talk to you guys about something serious for a moment. I know that you guys have come to expect inane silliness accompanied by video games when you hear my voice, but if you could bear with me for a second, I have something important I want to tell you about, and it's something that I want you to be a part of. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to the gentleman that you see on the screen in front of you. That's my father. That's my dad, Larry. And you may not be able to tell it just by looking at him, but that guy, he's the toughest person I've ever known. That's the only way I can really put it. And I don't know, I guess I could do the list. He used to roughhouse a lot with his brother, my uncle, and he managed to rupture his spleen. I don't know how. But up in Montana, apparently doctors are kind of scarce, and the one doctor they could find was badly hungover. So after removing his spleen, he stitched him up, but he did a terrible job of it. He had an inch-wide scar up his belly for the rest of his life. He broke his nose twice in the same football game when he was in high school. He served 2 tours of duty in Vietnam, and he had started a third one before he had to go home because his wife was mortally ill. She's just there's a lot to talk about, I guess. He had 3 heart attacks. He had, I think it was 3. Yeah, it was 3. Technically 3. 1 bypass surgery after one of those. He had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He had melanoma, or I think it was carcinoma actually, on his nose. He had kidney failure, and that's just the stuff I know about. And that's all on top of just the normal, ordinary struggles of life. And the thing that I think, what makes my dad tough in my eyes, was that he just went through it with this quiet determination. He never really gave up. And he actually had this kind of a bizarre optimism, really, when you think about all that crap. I mean, having to deal with all that, he was still cheery, fundamentally. And I can't say that I would necessarily be the same way, and I think a lot of people wouldn't. But in October of 2008, my dad started to have some problems reading and typing and speaking. And he went to the doctor, and he was diagnosed with a type of brain tumor known as glioblastoma multiforme. Even if you go through the best treatment that you could possibly do, if you did radiotherapy and chemotherapy, you're looking at probably I think the median survival rate is about 14 and a half months, and the 5-year survival rate is less than 10%. Basically, if you get diagnosed with it, there's nothing that can really be done. At that point in his life, my dad was already suffering from kidney failure, and just having to do chemotherapy and radiotherapy on top of that, doing dialysis and everything, that was just going to be too much. And the death that's associated with a brain tumor of that kind isn't pleasant. It would have involved seizures and eventually a coma, and just decreasing ability, I guess. As it was, he had a hard time. It's kind of awful, actually. He every time he addressed someone by name, he used my name. He called my mom Charlie. He called my brother Charlie. He called everybody Charlie. It was heartbreaking, to say the least. But the worst part, though, when you really think about the fundamental, it's kind of, if you think about these kinds of situations in terms of right and wrong, you're always going to be upset. But it felt especially wrong because this is just something that you can't fight. And my dad had fought every single thing that had been thrown his way, but he realized that he just couldn't win it. So he decided to stop doing dialysis and all of that, and not do any kind of treatment. And so after being diagnosed in October, we cared for him at home. Well, not just me, it was my mom. Most of the burden was on my mom. It was on me. It was on my sister. It was on my wife, and it was on my brother, who came down from Seattle to take care of him. And eventually we did lose him in December of that year, just 2 months after his diagnosis. The thing that I've learned from, one of many things I've learned from his death, I guess, is that you really don't have as much time as you think you do. He had just retired a few years prior, and I felt, again, if you think in terms of it being just or unjust, you're going to be frustrated regardless. But just having that time taken away from him really felt awful, on top of just the unfairness of the situation. But I then took stock in the fact that, well, in the realization, I guess, that you really do have very little time, and you have to do something good with that time. Um, and if, at the very least, you have to make yourself happy. Um, and that's part of why I started making Let's Plays. I've mentioned this a little bit, that I started doing Let's Plays when I was on night shift, and I was miserable, like really bad. And it just was an easy thing for me to do. It was an easy hobby for me to just sit down and talk while playing video games. So that's part of why I felt this impetus to do it, is because I really realized that it was important for me, especially in spite of my, or because of my experiences, that I needed to be happy. I then also found, though, as I was doing this, that I was making other people happy, which gave me an enormous amount of pride, because I realized also in the course of my dad's illness that not only do you have to make yourself happy, you have to do something worthy with your time. And I think that that's worthy. I've gotten all kinds of different messages from people saying that they are thankful for various reasons, whether it's just because they're having a crappy day, or whether it's because they are on the mend, they're possibly bedbound. People saying all these things about how I'm helping them, and that's enormous. That's the best thing I could hope for out of this hobby. And I sometimes poke fun at what I do, as it might be considered ridiculous, and I'm sure my dad would think it was a complete waste of time. But I think at their best, Let's Plays, as I've said, are good at fostering kind of a sense of goodwill, at least about video games, but about these communities that spring up around them. And what I've noticed as I've done Let's Plays is that that sense of goodwill actually can be directed in ways that help lots of people, beyond those people who are just fans of video games. We can use this kind of energy, I guess, to address causes that people care about. And I would like to do something like that. So on October 29th of this year, I've decided to mark my dad's birthday with a charity stream to support the National Brain Tumor Society. And I will be hosting it on twitch.tv. I know I just recently tested out Hitbox, and I did say it was better, but I think it's more important that I reach a wider audience with this. So it's going to be on my Twitch TV channel at twitch.tv/effingcontroller, and it'll start at 12 p.m. Pacific time, and it will end 12 hours later at midnight. I would like to do a 24-hour live stream, but I just don't have the same constitution as my dad, I guess. So I will be posting a link to the stream in the video description. I'll also be posting links to the countdown timer for information about this form of cancer, and most importantly of all, for the fundraiser page that I've set up. And you're welcome to go ahead and start donating now if you feel so inclined. That would be incredibly wonderful. And I've got a goal set of $1,000. I have no idea if we're even going to reach that. That's not important to me. I just want to do something, because that day of the year is obviously really tough for me, and I don't like just sitting around moping. And I go up to his grave and I lay flowers on it, and the rest of the day just feels hollow and tough, and I want to fill it with some kind of joy. So I want to do things that remind me of my dad. I'm going to be playing games that remind me of my dad, whether he played them or whether they just bring up a memory of him in some way. So that's the plan, and I really hope that you guys can join me. Again, that's going to be on October 29th at noon Pacific time. I'll post a countdown timer so you guys don't have to do the arithmetic to figure out when it actually is in your neck of the woods, and I really hope to see you guys there.